Howdy everyone, my name is Carlos Martinez and I'm super excited to be presenting with you all an initiative to bridge the weather and faith communities by producing a faith committee within the American Meteorological Society. Just quickly note, I am looking at my screen here, but my camera is on my keyboard because I bought this laptop pre-COVID, not thinking what would come next. So forgive me for that. Okay, so my journey in the atmospheric science stems from my faith in a lot of ways. How this started for me was when I was young. I was very fascinated with weather growing up in Dallas, Texas. There was tornado season. I would watch the Weather Channel and see the spaghetti plots and would make my own spaghetti plots because I was super enamored by the science behind it. Did some storm chasing as well by college when I got my bachelor's in atmospheric science at A&M and balloon launching and stuff. And it was actually during that time too that I became involved in my faith community. And so here's this little synopsis of my undergraduate career while I was presenting at AMS during my first meeting with my research as a junior at that time. I was also getting my ashes on as I was involved with my faith community. And it was during this time that I was really wanting to figure out, as seeing my peers integrating their values and morals of their faith with their passion, I wanted to figure that out with weather. How could I help people go on mission with my love of the atmospheric science? And for me, that came through research. And it's why I'm a graduate student at Columbia currently. I spent 2 summers at NCAR and NOAA during my undergraduate career through SOARS and through the Hauling Scholarship Program. Was inspired by Laudato Si, which I have here when I printed it out back in those days, 6 years ago. And I just loved how I was able to do science that had a tangible impact on communities, helping communities that are susceptible to climate change and weather risks. And for me, that just felt like such a niche with the inspiration for my faith to serve others and to serve our common home. However, there is a disclaimer here or a caveat, which is that this has been a very lonesome journey in a way. During my time, either at AMS or other scientific communities, I never knew of other scientists during my career with a faith-based background. And at AMS meetings, there were only a few town halls related to faith-based topics and environmental topics combined, one of which I remember was about Laudato Si and the integration of that within the weather enterprise. However, over the years, through the grapevine, I have found and interacted with several members in the AMS community who do have a spiritual or faith-based background. So overall, as an undergrad and a graduate student, I was always looking for mentors or inspiration with faith-based atmospheric scientists. One prominent would, of course, be Katharine Hayhoe. Who I would watch her information and her talks about faith and how she's integrating her faith in the weather enterprise and the need to bridge the communities together, which has been amazing. But that does lead to the first issue, is that there really isn't a formalized space for collaboration and networking, discussion, etc. at the AMS for those who have a spirituality or a faith-based background. Then the second issue kind of ties into this in a way, is the public perception of environmental issues, particularly with faith-based communities. And for this portion, I will be presenting a relatively new national poll by the IPL that came out this October that goes into some of these statistics for U.S. adults. One thing, or a couple things that I highlight here, is that although 74% of U.S. adults do believe climate change is happening, only 42% are not sure what causes climate change or believe that climate change is mostly caused by natural changes in the environment. And that's a huge number of U.S. adults. And when we look at this with particularly with those with religious backgrounds, we do see that there's a relatively high percentage. So it's a slim majority that believe that it's mostly caused by human anthropogenic forcings. And so there are other significant findings from the IPL. And just to preface this, although this is related to climate change, the sentiment is likely similar with respect to other environmental issues like weather disasters. Um, so it's just some important highlights here. A majority of U.S. adults see climate change as a moral and political issue. 40% have, though, at most, only some trust in climate scientists to provide information on climate change. In addition, a majority of U.S. adults with a religious affiliation have little or no trust at all with religious leaders on providing information on climate change. And this is likely due to the fact that more than 6 in 10 Americans say that their clergy leader rarely or never references climate change. And finally, most U.S. adults and those that have a religious affiliation believe that climate change will start to harm people in the U.S. at some later point rather than right now. And so all of these statistics give the impression that some religious or affiliated spiritual groups are apathetic in comparison to other groups towards mitigating and taking action on climate change. So why is that? So there are several reasons for this apathy and disconnect on environmental issues. One of which is that you have interest groups that exploit what are very normal and healthy uncertainties that exist within the scientific enterprise, such as whether extreme weather events are caused by climate change and the extent at which they are with different weather extremes, the cost benefit of nuclear energy. You take all of that uncertainty sometimes, and these interest groups sow doubt on the overwhelming scientific agreement that climate change is real. News reports and academic organizations can hype or exaggerate scientific findings that lead to public mistrust and cynicism. Environmental issues like climate change are highly multifaceted and complex. You're not dealing with just the environment, you're dealing with economies, you're dealing with health, food security, agriculture. All can lead to discord between personal autonomy and societal well-being. And then finally, the lack of ethos or disconnect between scientists and the general public. When you have approximately 44% of Americans saying that they know a scientist and 20% are friends with one, that can give reason as to why audiences can feel like scientists don't relate to me because there's this disconnect of relatability and understanding between the speaker and the audience. So it's clear we have two issues here. We have an internal issue related to no formalized space for the AMS for professionals and scientists who have a faith or spiritual background, and this external issue that you have U.S. adults in particular have a disconnect related to environmental issues. So what can the American Meteorological Society do? Well, the introduction and the initialization of an interfaith committee that deals with these two issues. And so to go into this, there's going to be two goals here. The internal goal, which helps address the issue of a formalized space. This is to foster a space for members to exchange ideas, thoughts, challenges that are related to their profession and their given religion or spirituality. And this is from all different sectors of the weather enterprise because we are so diverse and broad, it's amazing. We have the academia side, government, public, and private sectors. So here are some internal initiatives. And again, these are just a few, but I will be thrilled to have any ideas or conversations related to any of these and others. First off, establishing a prayer and meditation room for the AMS conference that allows members to have that spiritual time and space while at the AMS conference. Develop a social gathering, allowing us at the conference for those with this background to come together and exchange ideas, have conversations, have a good time, and for anyone else who is in solidarity with this. Providing resources and information for our members regarding places of worship or service within the host city at a given AMS conference. Having this, for example, in the manual or in the booklet or online. Workshops for AMS members on communicating climate science for faith-based communities. For example, with the American Association of the Advancement of Science Dialogue on Science, Ethics, and Religion. They do workshops on the communication and bridging the communication between science and faith-based communities. And so having them come and develop a workshop for members to understand and grow. And then finally, utilizing data from the AMS 2020 survey related to religion and spirituality to further address the needs of our members. And then the external goal, which is to be the bridge between the weather enterprise and the faith community. This is very important because not only is there a shared space amongst members, but there's also a real and amazing opportunity between the weather enterprise connecting with faith-based communities that are already doing amazing work related to environmental issues. And so here are some external initiatives. The first is to collaborate with the plethora of faith and spiritual based organizations. There are so many, and it's insane to think that we have not, as a society, been able to reach out and collaborate and develop connections with these communities who are doing unbelievable work related to the care of our common home. And so establishing connections and dialogue with these religious communities, in addition to the indigenous community, there is so much potential here that is exciting. Um, in addition to this, establishing a dialogue and connection with faith-based news outlets and media as a way to bridge with faith-based audiences by establishing connections where you have a faith-based outlet reaching the AMS, then they can come to the Interfaith Committee with that information so that we provide them with someone with that spirituality or religious background to then communicate the environmental issue or the topic of interest. That again allows for that bridge between both entities. So here are some other valuable external initiatives. One is to promote existing and future work that professionals and scientists within the AMS have on faith and environmental issues. This is a great opportunity and really solidarity for the AMS in giving an opportunity for those members who do experience this to have that ability to expose their work to the greater public. In addition to this, also with affiliated universities that have amazing work already on environmental and faith-based issues, like, for example, Yale on their Forum on Religion and Ecology, having this either on the AMS platform, on social media, again, having this exposure for the public. And then also this integration of collaboration and work with faith and religious leaders. Because we see the issue of U.S. adults not finding a connection with religious leaders with respect to environmental issues. One way to mitigate that can be to establish town halls and workshops that inform religious communities and clergy leaders on these different issues and the science behind it, or what's happening in their specific neighborhood that then can be translated to their audience, to their members of their communities. So this committee would be a part of BRAID, or the Board of Representation, Accessibility, Inclusion, and Diversity, or formerly known as the Board of Women and Minorities. Why is that? Well, it fits really well. You have increased representation amongst members with diverse religious and spiritual backgrounds, greater accessibility for members to express, share, and receive ideas and information on faith and environmental topics, and it's an inclusive community. And this is super important. This is not the AMS Christian Committee. This is not the AMS Islamic or Indigenous Committee. No, it's a committee for all religions and spiritual backgrounds. It's why it's the Interfaith Committee. It's a bridge of all faiths related to the issues we see at hand on environmental issues. So in conclusion, we have two issues here. We have the internal issue where there's no space in the AMS for faith-based members, and the external issue that there's a disconnect amongst U.S. faith-based groups on environmental issues. So what can a society that has resources, information, networks, etc. on weather and climate issues? Well, the Interfaith Committee. This is a committee that establishes two things. Internally, fostering a space to exchange dialogue, information, networking, etc. for members of spiritual and faith backgrounds. And that too, you can be at the forefront for the AMS between the weather enterprise and the faith community to establish that ethos, that connection, to deal with the disconnect that we see today in the United States. And so please feel free, if you have any information, ideas, or comments, please contact me. Looking forward to it. Again, thank you all for participating and listening. listening in, and have a good day.